So welcome back everybody. For today's video I want to do a brutally detailed review on the sawmill that you see sitting behind me. This is a Wood Mizer LT15 Sawmill, LT15GO Sawmill, and I have owned it now for, I think I got it last February, so a little over a year. And I have cut thousands of board feet with this machine. And if you're interested, you can check out the rest of the channel. There are quite a few videos of me cutting different types of wood with this machine, doing different things with it. And you'll probably get a really good idea of its capabilities if you want to check out those videos. But for today's video is kind of geared toward somebody who might be in the market for a sawmill, who might be looking at the LT15 and might want some more details on this machine. Of course, you can go to Wood Mizer's website and get the basic details, but I really want to go over kind of the nuts and bolts, nitty-gritty, every day, somebody who uses it constantly type stuff on this machine. And it's probably going to get boring and detailed, and it might be a long video, but I just really want it to be informative enough for somebody to make an educated decision on what type of sawmill that they really need for their specific purpose. So what I want to do, I think, is just kind of go over the machine, how it is, go over the bed and the head and everything else on it. And then after I do all that, I'll go over my likes and my dislikes of it, and I'll just put that out there. I'm not sponsored by Wood Mizer. This is a machine that I purchased with my own money, so I'm going to give y'all an unbiased review on this thing and let y'all make up your own minds. So let's go ahead and start with the head of this machine, the saw head, and everything that's going on up here. And like I said, what I'll do is just kind of give y'all the facts on this machine, and then I'll tell you my opinion later on in the video. So this particular machine has got a 19 horsepower Kohler Command Pro engine on it, V-twin gas burner, air-cooled. This is the smallest gasoline engine they make for this machine. They also make a 25 horse Kohler, 17 horse Yanmar diesel, and there's probably an electric option too. But that is the power plant that I chose to get on this machine, a Kohler Command Pro 19 horsepower engine. If you can see up there, we have got a water tank. That is a 5-gallon gravity-fed water tank to keep the blade down here cool and lubricated during sawing. We have right here the head up and down control. This is just simply a chain-driven wheel, gear, whatever you want to call it, kind of like a bicycle chain, I guess. It's got a sprocket and a very heavy chain right here that controls the up and down motion of this head. And these notches represent different measurements. So one notch is a 1/16 of an inch, two notches is an 1/8 of an inch, so on and so forth. 1/2 of a turn represents 1 inch of cut. Of course, you add 1/8 of an inch of that to make up for your kerf, and two turns is going to give you a one full turn is going to give you a 2-inch cut plus 2 notches for your kerf, and then you'll have exactly a 2-inch cut. This right here is the power feed system. The standard that comes with this machine is a crank feed system, and it runs off the same rope feed, but it's just on this one it's just simply an electric motor with this control station right here. And this is just an alternative. It was an add-on option that I did for it, and it's just an alternative to the standard crank feed system. I'll go over later why I chose the that particular system for this machine. This lever right here engages and disengages the blade. It is in a pretty convenient location, and that's your engage and that's your disengage there. This right here controls your blade guide. If you're sawing wider logs, you're of course going to want it open wider, and if you're sawing narrower logs, you're going to want it closed a little bit. And basically that just gives your blade some stability. It helps it to not wave through the cut so bad if you're sawing wood that has a tendency to do that, and it just gives you more stability on the blade. And of course it's very important to make sure that that is the width right there is corresponding to whatever width of the log that you're cutting. The fuel tank over here is I believe 4.5, 5 gallons. I think I'm going to call it a 5-gallon fuel tank. It does have a fuel cutoff switch right here, so if you're going to let it sit for a while, you can cut the fuel off, let it run dry, and protect your carburetor. Of course, I always use, 99% of the time, I use ethanol-free fuel just to make sure my small engine here stays going strong. The battery box is right up here. Of course, it comes with a battery. I mean, it's just a battery box. It controls the power feed system and of course cranks the engine. Let's see what else is on this head that y'all need to know about. This switch right here controls the water flow rate. You can see that's pretty much wide open right there, and that's closed. You could also have a cut off and a cut on at the valve up at the water tank. And of course right here, going back to the thickness of your cuts, you do have a gauge right here that has all of your measurements. And you can also get quarter scales, different kinds of scales as magnets right here. Not sure if Wood Mizer sells them, but they are available pretty commonly if you don't really like the original one that comes with the machine. This head, let's look at the front of the machine, the head, and I'll show y'all exactly how this head works. So let's check out the front of this machine here. I wanted to show y'all the saw head, and I'm sure that y'all have researched, if y'all are in the market for a mill, and have seen that the larger Wood Mizers have that cantilever design that is unique to Wood Mizer. Well, this machine, you do see that it has two posts on it, but it is still what they call a semi-cantilever design. So this saw head and engine is only supported by the left side over here. You can actually take this saw head and pick it up and moving, and I'm sure of course y'all have seen me when I'm sawing, when you engage the blade, it has a tendency to jump just a little bit, and that is because this is not attached at all to this post over on this right side. This post over here is basically here, as far as I can tell, to offer more support to the left post, that main post on the left side. And of course the water tank and the fuel tank up here are also connected to that post. So this post over here, basically there to offer more stability to this head, and the saw head and engine are kind of cantilevered off of that left side over there. So here we've got the inside of the saw head. These are the band wheels. Basically, we have the exact same concept as your band saw inside your workshop. These are very large cast iron, I assume, wheels running off of this bearing in the middle. And they have, instead of being solid, they actually have a belt. You can see this belt right here. And these belts are, of course, replaceable once they get worn, and that's just kind of how Wood Mizer does it. They have that extra belt that rides in that groove on this. Basically, it's kind of a pulley and a band wheel, I guess you could call it, except it doesn't pull anything, and you replace this once it gets worn out. And right here you have the front of the stabilization bar right here that goes in and out to keep your blade stable through the cut, depending on what kind of size log that you're using there. And right here you have your clutch system to engage and disengage the blade. Let me go around and do that and let y'all see how that works. So that's basically how that works. Let me fire it up and give y'all a view on how it really works. So basically what we have is a belt from the engine. This clutch engages that belt right here, as you just saw. That belt turns this wheel, and this wheel right here in turn turns the other wheel on the right side of the saw head. And that's just the clutch system that is used on this machine. And also, I forgot to mention, right down in here there is a brake. Once you disengage disengage the blade, that brake goes into the middle right here on this pulley and helps slow down those wheels. So let's check out the deck or the bed or the bunks or whatever you want to call it on this machine. This is what you would call, I guess, a modular bed system. There are 3 different sections on this machine totaling about 20 feet. The length of the entire bed is 20 feet. The maximum length of cut on this one is, I think, 17 and a half feet, somewhere along in there, because you lose a little bit of distance on your saw head, because that saw head can't get back the maximum distance because of that the post on the left side, and it can't get any farther up because of the front of the post. So that's just how it is, about 17 and a half feet 17.5 feet length of cut. You could theoretically buy as many of these bed sections as you wanted to and lengthen your capabilities out to infinity if you wanted to. But once you do that, you couldn't use the trailer package because it would create stability issues and you wouldn't be able to tow it down the road. This right here is what the saw head rides on. There's a bearing system, 2 bearing systems on that left post that run on this track right here. And as you can see, the other side has simply got a roller in the bottom of that right side support post, and it rolls on the top of that right side bed. Now these are the bunks that the log rests on. These are 2x6 pieces of tubular steel. They are, let me get a measuring tape and show you how thick they are. So let's get a closer look at these bunks. This is a piece of 2x6 tube steel. These are 1/8 of an inch thick. You can see right here, I don't know how well y'all can see that, but the metal on these is about 1/8 of an inch thick. Actually, it's exactly 1/8 of an inch thick. And these are welded on either side to the sides of the mill to these bed sections, very, very strong. This right here is a piece of 3/8 of an inch steel. This is what your cant rests against so that you can saw to within 1 inch of these bunks right here and get the thinnest cut possible out of that saw head. This is how these bed sections are put together. You can see you have a very, very large bolt that bolts these bed sections together. There's another one on the inside. So there's 2 of these bolts bolting these bed sections together. On top of that, we have a couple of pins. There's 1 pin on this side and a corresponding hole in this side. There's another pin down here and a corresponding hole over here. And of course what those serve to do is when you put those 2 bed sections together, it lines them up appropriately, keeps them from moving around at all. Here is your rail that the saw head rides on. You can see we have bolts all up and down the bed that bolts these sections to the bed, and it's also adjustable. It's hard to see because of the sawdust and automatic transmission fluid that I've been putting on here, but this is actually adjustable. If you need to adjust this any which way, there's some wiggle room in each of these bolt holes that you can use to adjust it up and down, whatever you need. Of course, here's a stabilizer right here that bolts these 2 together a little bit stronger. So besides these 2 bolts and besides these 2 pins, there's a very large piece of tube steel that bolts below these 2 sections of bed frame to increase the stability of this bed section even more. This one right here also doubles as the mount for the axle that's below. But between each of these bed sections, you also have something on the bottom holding them together. And I'll show you all the other side too. So here is that square stabilizer that does not have the axle mounted on it. You can see it's just a square piece of steel, tube steel, mounts to the bottom of those bed sections at the seam and goes all the way, it's one piece, goes all the way from one side to the other and adds a great amount of stability to this whole system. Here are the tires that come with this system, the trailer tires. These are just standard trailer tires like you would probably find on a boat trailer or something like that. They are 145 R12s. They come with, the standard ones that come with it are Rainier ST tires. And no trailer brakes, of course. It's just not heavy enough to need trailer brakes. And of course we have 3 leaf springs right here that help to make the ride not so bad for the machine. While we're here, I'm going to show you the fenders on this machine. There's of course 2 of them, and they just simply slide down into the groove that's on the bed, and you attach it with these rubber straps, and that's it. Very simple, very easy. Once you get to your area to saw, you just take them off and you're good to go. So while we're checking out fenders and axles and stuff like that, this is the correct position for road travel on this machine. You just push the head back to right behind the axles. You'll take this very heavy duty pin right here and make sure it locks into the bed just like that, so it doesn't roll back and forth. And on the other side there's a pin, and I'll show you all this pin back here too. So to keep the head on the machine from bouncing around while in transit, you'll just lower the head down into this bracket, and you'll take your pin and and put your pin right there so your head won't go flopping around while you're bumping down the road. So with the exception of the fenders, that's really all that you have to do to get it road ready, except for, of course, getting the jack stands up and that kind of thing. I found it to be very fast, about 12 minutes to set it up, something like that. But that's how you prepare it for road travel. So here are the jack stands that come with this, this sawmill. These are, I guess, Ram brand jack stands. They are capable of supporting 2,000 pounds a piece, and there are 6 of them with this mill. These are an infinite adjustment type thing. So you can see there's not a whole lot of there's not any, not a rod you have to pry it up and down. You can just turn this and adjust it however you need to adjust it. Now it comes with a, I don't know, kind of like one of those old school bit and brace drills. It comes with that in order to bring this up and down. Of course, somewhere along the way I managed to lose mine, so I have got a 3/4 inch driver with a 1 1/4 socket on it to operate it, but what I use always is this 1 1/4 inch driver with a drill adapter on it, and that makes everything a whole lot faster as far as getting these things up and down and preparing the mill for work. These also have grease fittings on them to keep these good and greased. Once you get them off the ground, you just yank this pin out and bring it up like that for road travel. Now, of course, you would have this in a good bit farther, but I have found that it's important to kind of consider where you're going, because if you're going to go to a spot where there's a steep driveway going out into the road, and I've actually had this happen, you're going to end up bottoming out some of these jack stands while they're up and bending it. So just be aware kind of where you are. If there's any danger of that happening, you're better off just taking all 6 jack stands off, or at least the fronts and the backs, and throwing them in the back of your truck for travel. So the tongue system on this, and be aware that all this stuff applies for a standard LT15 as well. This is just an LT15 on a trailer, but you can get this Go package for your LT15 and convert it if you want. But here's the trailer, or the tongue, and it just bolts, of course, to your sawmill bed. It's, of course, got lights and all that stuff on it, safety chains. It's a standard 2-inch ball. And this is a toolbox. It's not mounted right now, but this is a toolbox that me and my dad added onto it, and it's incredibly handy. But that's the tongue system on it. So let's check out the clamp system that's on this machine. This thing has got 6 side supports, or log stops, or whatever you want to call it, 3 of which have these rollers on the top, and of course those rollers make life a whole lot easier when turning logs. There are 3 of these. Just have this angled one, but you can take these rollers if you want to and put them on different ones, just kind of depending on which ones you use the most or what your preference is. Also, you can buy more of these rollers and put them on all 6 if you want to. So these are the 2 that I use the most, of course, and that's all the way up. And here's your clamping system right here. It's a very simple, just this little arm right here with this screw in it, very heavy duty, and it's got this puck on the end that's just kind of got a point on it that helps dig into the log. You don't have to use that. Sometimes there are situations where you only need to use this right here. And of course this goes out very far, just to kind of depending on the size of the log, and it goes all the way up like this if you have a larger log. There are 2 of these clamps right here. And really, there are a few places on this mill you can place this clamp system if you want to. Just kind of depending on what you're using, how often you use, what part of the bed that you use the most for the size of logs that you're working with. So that's the clamp system. And of course, as your log gets smaller, as you're cutting, you just bring these down to make sure the blade doesn't hit these. And of course, as you can see, I have not always done that perfectly, because I've got some good scars on some of these log stops to prove that you got to be careful with where these are while you're cutting. So let's check out the log loading system on this mill. This is probably not an industry term by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm going to call this a self-contained log loading system, which I take to mean that as long as you've got a well-organized pile of logs, all you have to do is pull up next to the pile of logs, the winch, the ramps, the crank. That'll take care of the rest. You don't need any extra equipment in order to get the logs up onto the deck. So basically how this works is you have this winch, which of course goes up and down, and it comes down for when you're sawing and up for when you're loading. And I'll just have to say now it's a very heavy duty winch, and in the last video you could see us load that log, which was well over a ton, and it did a really nice job. But basically you just pull this out, pull your cable out, run this cable on top of the log, then back up under the log, and then as you crank this back, the log rolls up these ramps, and it takes advantage of this, of course, this mechanical advantage, and plus the rolling action in the ramp to make it a pretty easy operation. Now it also has an anti-rollback lock on the winch, so that if it slips out of your hands or you have to let it go for whatever reason, this won't roll backwards by itself. So that's the log loading system. Now this is an add-on. I don't remember exactly how much it costs, but I will tell you that it is an add-on that you would have to purchase separately. So guys, that pretty well does it as far as just the basic features of this machine. Now I want to get into my opinion of this machine, what I like about it, what I don't like about it, just to help you make a more informed decision if you might be in the market for something like this. So again, we'll start back here with the saw head. This is the Kohler Command Pro 19 horsepower engine. This is the smallest gas engine that they offer for this machine. The reason that I decided to go with just the smallest gas engine on this thing is because very rarely do I get any logs that are 20, 21, 22 inches or more. More regularly, I'm sawing 14, 15, 16, sometimes 18-inch logs, and it's all pine. Well, 90% of what I cut, probably 95% of what I cut really is pine. That's just what I prefer to cut, and there's a lot of pine around here. But this engine doesn't have any problems going through logs of that size and that species fairly easily. If I do get something larger, it's a pretty simple matter just to slow the head feed down through the log and just kind of let it go a little bit slower, and this engine doesn't have any trouble dealing with it. So that's why I decided to go with a smaller engine. If you are going to be very regularly sawing 20, 22, 24-inch logs with your LT15, probably encourage you to increase your engine size either to the 25 horse Kohler or to the 17 horse diesel. Of course, that's a decrease in horsepower, but my assumption is that there's basically more power in that diesel engine. Anyway, that's how I feel about the engine. This is a very good engine, a very reliable engine. It's a fuel efficient engine. You can pretty well cut all day on 5 gallons of fuel. And yeah, this is a really good engine. It's a little bit cold natured, not too bad. This is actually the next day from the last video that I shot. So we'll go ahead and start it, and I'll show you. It's cold, and kind of show you how easy it is to crank. So of course the weather's not really that cold today, so it started really easily. But yeah, really good engine, no complaints whatsoever about the engine on the machine. So let's check out the blade engage. This blade engage, I think Wood Mizer has pretty well devised a perfected system for this. But of course the blade engage increases the throttle on the machine and then engages the blade for you to make your cut. This was actually one of the things I was most excited about when I first got this machine, because my LT10, you had to do the action separately. You had to throttle up the engine and then engage the blade with 2 separate actions, and it was kind of a pain, I guess, but this is a really good system. The only problem that I've had with this is that the linkage, well, let me show you the linkage up here in the engine. So there's the linkage, if you can see that. That is the linkage that controls the throttle on the engine when you do your blade engage. I'll show you how it works. I mean, there's really not a whole lot to it, but I have had that linkage get kind of dry and it would stick and the engine will not throttle down all the way, go back to idle when you disengage the blade. A few shots of WD-40 and that solved that problem. So really a non-issue. It's a very good system on engaging the blade. Here's the head up down on this machine. This is a really good system. I like this wheel right here. It's pretty intuitive, I guess you could say. Like I said earlier, a good half of a turn, you get 1 inch plus 2 of these little notches to consider the kerf. If you want to do 2 full inches, if you're cutting true 2x4s or something like that, all you need to do is spin it 1 full time plus 2 notches for the kerf. And all of these little notches right here have got different lengths markers on it. So it allows you to keep up with where you are so that you can do a 1/4 of a turn if you need it, a full turn or a 1/2 a turn, whatever you need. And it's very, very heavy duty. This is a thick piece of steel right here, probably a good 1/8 of an inch, plus this chain that operates it. Very, very heavy chain. I don't have any complaints whatsoever about this. Wood Mizer really did a good job designing this head up and down system. It's very smooth also. This is the power feed system on the LT15. This is not standard equipment. This is an accessory that I purchased when I bought the mill. They run $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 depending on if they're on sale or not. And let me tell you, this was worth every single penny that I paid for it. This speeds up production on this mill probably by 50%, and it helps with operator fatigue, of course. And Wood Mizer claims that it will make more consistent cuts, and I would agree with that because you set it to 1 speed and it's going to go through the log at 1 speed, and it's a really, really, really good system. The only problem that I've had with it is when I first got the machine and used it for a while, there's a little bolt back in here that prevents this switch right here from going back too far, and that came loose and it allowed this to flip back way too far, and it just didn't work right because of that. But I took it to Wood Mizer for another maintenance issue, which I'll go over in a minute, and they were able to fix it, and I haven't had any trouble since. So basically the way it works is you've got a rheostat here. You can set it to any speed you want between the slow and the fast speeds. So it's infinite speed adjustment, and once you get your speed adjusted properly, hit that, it stays in place as you're going through the log. If you need to adjust it while you're going through the log, all you got to do is turn this down or turn it up, whatever speed that you need. Once you get through with your cut, bring this, flip this back up, raise your head up, and drag it back. The speed on the return is set. If you get in a tight and something does go wrong with this, you do have a push bar here as well as a backup. The only other trouble besides this that I've had with this is pine pitch building up on the feed rope. I'll show you the rope here after this. There was pine pitch on the last sawing job that I did. I call it a job. This is just a hobby. I don't really make my living off of it. But the last bunch of logs that I did, I ended up getting a bunch of pitch built up on the rope, and it made it stick and the rope would jump off. But I was able to clean up one of the pulleys, and it appears that it's getting back to normal. So that's really the only 2 problems I've had with it. Let me show you the rope a little bit closer. So this is the nylon rope that pulls the head up and down the mill, and you're probably thinking, oh man, a rope, that's kind of cheap. Why don't they use a chain? But let me tell you, this rope, I have not had any trouble whatsoever except for a little bit of pine tar on this rope right here. This is a good, strong rope, and it's a really good system. There's no reason to question this right here because it has been incredibly reliable. It's very smooth, and it just works. So as the head rides up and down, there's a electrical motor up in the power feed box up here that, if you can see this right here, it just rotates. So let me get you a closer look. Here's the up underside of the power feed box. There's the electric motor, and that motor, of course, has got a pulley on the end that spins and pulls the rope onto a pulley down here and pulls the head up and down the mill. Let me just push it by hand and kind of show you. So that's how it works. Forward, reverse, very, very simple system, and it has proven to be incredibly reliable. So let's check out the water delivery system here. I mean, it's pretty standard. It's just a tank of water, gravity fed down to the blade. There's the cutoff up here. That's off, that's on, and you've got a valve down here, excuse me, down here right below the engine to control the rate of flow. So normally what I do is I just leave this on. No, sorry, I leave this on all the time and set it to a certain flow rate, and then I can turn this off and on. Now it kind of sounds inconvenient because this is on one side and that's on the other side, but usually I just leave this dripping, you know, for several logs on end, or even for the entire time that I'm cutting, because there's really not a whole lot of water coming out and it'll last a very long time. You can also, and I've done this as well, you can leave this on all the time and control your flow rate with this right here. It just may not be quite as consistent. So yeah, really good system. There's really nothing at all that can go wrong with that system. So let's check out the blade guide and the adjustment system for this saw head. The blade guide it's proven to be very reliable. I mean, it's pretty standard. I mean, you open it up all the way for a larger log. You close it for a smaller one, and anywhere in between. It's proven to be very reliable. I haven't had any adjustment issues with this, and for the most part it stays exactly where you put it. Sometimes it does kind of drift in a little bit as you're cutting, so as you're cutting it'll just very, very slowly come in a little bit, but that's not a huge deal. You just come up here and bump it back. It's not like it's floppy and loose. It just kind of does that. But maybe it could be tightened to prevent that, but it hasn't been an issue that has really worried me that much, because it doesn't happen. It's not that bad. It's not that big of a deal. I mentioned earlier that this is what they call a semi-cantilevered head. That means the head is only supported by this post over here, and it's cantilevered out. So in that, you've got an adjustment screw right here, or adjustment bolt. And if this ever gets out of adjustment, or you want to adjust it for whatever reason, you've got a very simple, I think that's a 9/16 a bolt right there, and you turn it in, excuse me, you turn it one way to cant the head up, turn it the other way to cant it down, and just put a measuring tape or something from the blade down to the bunks down here to get it right. So real simple, real easy. If your head ever gets out of adjustment, it's a 5-minute fix. It's not a huge deal. Now, having said that, the head is not bad to come out of adjustment. I think they adjusted it at Wood Mizer when I took it up there for another maintenance issue, and I think I have adjusted it maybe once since, maybe twice, I don't really know, but it's fine. It's a really good system. You see that as kind of a diss on Wood Mizer sometimes with these cantilevered heads, but let me tell you, there's nothing wrong with this cantilevered head. It's a very, very reliable system, very easy to adjust if it gets out of adjustment, and don't let that be a turn off for you if you're looking into these machines. Very, very good system, very, very reliable. I've never had any trouble with it. And I'll add to that also that when I did adjust it, it was really because I'm a little bit OCD sometimes, and I wanted to make sure that this blade was making lumber that was within a 32nd or a 64th on each side. So if you're not that OCD about it, it's really fine. You can get it down to dead level if you want to, but all in all, I have never had any trouble with this, and it's a very good system. The fuel tank, there's not much to say about it. It's just a standard fuel tank. It's good. It's a good rigid design. They used to put these up on the top up there. Of course, I never had one that had that, the fuel tank all the way on the top up there, but I can imagine that this right here is a much more convenient design, being at chest level, at least for me. Nothing much to say about the fuel tank. It's a good, solid, reinforced fuel tank. Holds plenty of fuel for hours and hours and hours of cutting. I mean, you can really saw pretty much all day on one good full tank of fuel. Always try to use non-ethanol gas in this machine. That's just what you really need to do in your small engines. It also has a cutoff valve right here. You can cut it off and drain your carburetor if you're going to put this thing in storage. And yeah, I mean, there's not much to say about it. Just a standard fuel tank, works great. While we're behind the saw head right here, let's check out the blade tensioning system. Here's your lever right here. Once you get your blade on, you bring this well, when you're changing the blades, it'll be down like this to loosen it up. Once you get done, you just bring it back up like this, and it locks into place. Now, that is a lot of pressure. We're running around probably 2,500 roughly pounds of pressure on that blade, and this thing does a really good job of you know, taking all the work out of it. Let's look at the fine adjustment mechanism down here also. So this is the mechanism that allows you to adjust tension on your blade. There's not a gauge on it, so what you do is you turn this right here, oh goodness, it's a tight spot, sorry y'all. You would turn this right here once your tensioning lever is loose, and make sure that when it tightens up, the back of that bolt right there is lined up with that silver washer, with the front side of that silver washer. Works great, really simple system. What I like to do is when I need to change the blade, I will undo the tensioning lever, bring the tensioning lever down, then I will unscrew that a good bit, and that helps me to get the blade off a lot easier. Then I'll just screw it back in and tighten it up and keep fine adjusting it until the head of that bolt is lined up appropriately with that washer. So we've been looking at quite a few positives on this mill. Let's check out a negative. This is the right side support post on the mill. It serves to stabilize that left side support post and the saw head. It has a roller bearing in the bottom. Basically, it just rides up and down the top of this bed rail right here. Now, when I first got this mill, there was a problem, and I didn't notice it for a while, or didn't figure it out for a while. But what would happen here is that this right side support post was actually twisted out just a little tiny bit, so that it created a problem in that roller bearing in there was kind of turned out, kind of like the front wheels on a car. So basically, that was turned out very slightly to the right. And what would happen is, as this saw head ran down the tracks, this had a tendency to run out. It would do this. It would kind of creep out like this as it rode farther and farther down the tracks. And once it got to a certain point, the tension on this post would snap it back. Now, that didn't really create a huge problem unless I was sawing a larger log, because when you're sawing a larger log, you have a lot of torque that transfers from the blade to this right side post, and that would push it out even farther and cause it to cause that wheel to ride on this shoulder. That would cause this post to drop down just a little bit, and it would throw off my cut, and it was just a mess. So after I posted the first video about it, Wood Mizer actually contacted me and said, hey, that's one of those things that happens like 1 in 100 mills that we sell. Please bring it in, and we'll certainly be happy to fix it for you. So I brought it in, and basically they created a system of ratchet straps and pipe wrenches, and they were able to twist this right post back into spec. And since they have done that, it's really been fine. I really can't complain about it anymore. I had quite a few people on the on the channel comment and said, man, they did a sorry job on that repair. They weakened the metal, blah blah blah. No, they did fine. There's nothing wrong with this repair that they did. They twisted it back into spec, and it works. It works fine now. So no complaints anymore about this. So just be aware. If you're in a situation where you can inspect your mill before you get it, make sure you check that out and make sure that it's within spec right here, because if it's not, it's going to give you some trouble. So now let's check out an issue that's, I probably shouldn't call it an issue, it's really not a problem, but I'm kind of ambivalent about this. I'm not going to call this a positive or a negative. This is the sawdust exhaust port, I guess you could call it. This is where all the sawdust sprays out of the saw head as you're going through a log, and it does get quite a bit of sawdust in the operator's path where you're walking right here. It is somewhat designed to blow the sawdust away from where the operator walks, and I guess if you stay real close to the mill, it's really not a big deal, but it does get quite a bit of sawdust where you're walking. So just be aware that that's kind of how this mill works. I'm sure that you could put some kind of a rubber tube on this like the larger mills have to help direct that sawdust farther away, and I've actually threatened to do that before, but I just hadn't gotten around to it. But just be aware you're going to be walking in sawdust as you're operating this mill, It's not really a huge deal unless you're sawing, you know, 25 logs, 30 logs a day in the same exact spot. So just be aware, that's where the sawdust exhaust port is on the Wood Mizer LT15, and really all the Wood Mizer mills. So here's something else that I would probably consider a negative with this mill, and I swear I'm not trying to cause any trouble here. I really just want everybody to be aware of what this machine is capable of, and you know what according to what your needs might be. So if you're shopping for this mill, you've already seen that this machine will handle a 28-inch log with a 26-inch width of cut. Now that is what it says on Wood Mizer's website, and it will indeed handle a 28-inch log without any trouble at all. Well, I say no trouble, it's going to be rough for you handling it, but it will handle a 28-inch log. Once you get that cant squared off, then you can cut smaller boards with it. So the only issue that I have with that is, let's open this throat up all the way so we can see that throat is open completely all the way, and we can indeed see that between these two rollers right here you can get, well, let me turn it around to show you all that I'm being honest here, you can indeed cut 26.5 inches. So that is the distance between this right here, these two rollers right here. That's the distance between those two. So theoretically, yes, you can cut a 26-inch board off of this mill. However, practically you just can't do it, and I'll show you why. So once you get your cant squared off, you're going to be using these little posts right here that I showed you earlier, and those are of course designed so that you can cut to within 1 inch of the bed, or 1 1/8 inches, somewhere along there, of the bed. Now, this is where your cant's going to be. Your squared up cant is going to be resting directly against this post right here. Therefore, that side of the cant, pretend that this is the inside of the cant, it's going to correspond to right here on the blade. So you actually lose this much in your cut because of where your cant is positioned. Now let's see what that measurement is. So that measurement is going to be 23 and a little over 3/4, somewhere along in there, about 23 3/4, so just shy of 24 inches. So there's just no way you're going to cut a 26-inch board on this. If somebody else has got more experience with this mill and can tell me how you can cut a 26-inch board, I will be happy to recant this, but I'm just not seeing how you're going to do it. And the reason that I tell you this, like I said, is not to cause trouble, but if you think you're regularly going to be milling larger logs and you want 26, 27, 28-inch boards out of those logs, you might want to consider going to a LT15 wide, because this mill is just not going to give you 26-inch boards. It'll give you 22, 23, maybe 24-inch boards, but not 26. So just be aware that if you're going to be regularly doing very large logs, this is not the mill that you need. So just to summarize the saw head and the operator station up here, before we move on to the bed, this is a really good setup, I think. The engine's been reliable, the power feed's been reliable, this operates smooth, the head up and down operates very smooth and is reliable. It cuts very, very accurately. The blade engage works great. There's really nothing up here in this area that I can complain about. It's very well designed, and I would buy with confidence. If you're concerned about a convenient operator station, if you're concerned about reliability for the saw head, don't be. It's a really good setup. It's well designed, well engineered, and I'm very, very satisfied with everything that's going on in this area. Let's move on to the bed and go from there. So these are the side supports, the log stops, whatever you want to call them. There are 6 of them on this mill, like I said, and this is one of the ones that has a roller up on the top. Now, like I said, you can buy extra rollers for these if you want, or you can move the rollers to the ones that you really need the rollers on. Now, the only complaint that I have about this is the way that it's mounted down here. There's just a very long bolt through this side support here, and it has a lock nut on the end of that bolt, and that lock nut is just really not the best lock nut ever. It doesn't lock really like it should. So what that means is what it'll do is it'll loosen up, and it won't support itself in any other position except all the way up, or of course all the way down. So what I did to solve that problem, or at least we'll see how well it solves it, it may end up coming loose again. I put some Loctite on that bolt just to supplement that lock nut, and of course you can see now it does stay. Now you may not think that's a big deal. See, it's actually kind of loose now. You may not think that's a big deal, but when you're sawing, it's a big deal. So what you have to consider is, you know, if you're at one end of the log and you're trying to adjust your log stops here, you put one in one position and then you move. See, it's actually moving now. I'm going to have to tighten it up. You put one in one position and then you try to walk back to get the other one in the right position, and the second you let go of this log stop, it just kablunk goes straight down, and that creates a lot of issues. You can overcome it by moving the log and jamming the log up against it, but it's not good. It's fixable, it's overcomeable, but it's not a perfect system. Now, having said that, there is also a bolt behind this right here that theoretically you could unscrew so that it jams up against this plate right here. So you can see where it's been scraping, but it jams up against that plate right there, and allows this to gives this some tension so it doesn't fall. And the reason that I don't have that tightened up is because I have got it set so that it makes it square. So what I mean is, when I'm sawing a log, once I clamp the log and this goes all the way back and rests on this plate, that means this is square with these bunks. So that's how I've got mine set up. That bolt on the back could be used as a tensioning bolt for this, but I've got mine set up so that it keeps everything square. So really, I guess if you want to use that for tensioning, it's really kind of a non-issue, but I don't use mine that way. So just be aware that if you want to use yours the way that I'm using mine, that's going to be an issue. Right here you can see this plate. There's a reinforcement plate. I saw a conversation on the Wood Mizer owners forum, and somebody was saying that their old LT15 did not have this plate right here. They had to weld their own plates in, and basically this plate keeps the bed right here from being worn out from the up and down, up and down, up and down motion of this right here. So very, very good reinforcement that Wood Mizer added right here. I don't think you need to expect any of this to wear out during the lifetime of the mill. So this is one of the two clamps, one of the two log clamps that comes on the LT15. This is a very, very simple, idiot-proof, bulletproof system that I have not ever had any kind of trouble with whatsoever. This is the same exact system that they used on the LT10s. Of course, they don't make LT10s anymore. The same exact system that came on those, and I mean, it's just so simple. There's really nothing that can go wrong. It's a good heavy-duty tube steel. It clamps the logs just fine, and you know, if you're concerned about this falling off, there's a guy on YouTube here. His channel name is Jostle Joe 1, and I believe he used to, I hope he still does, makes these so that they don't come off, a different kind that doesn't come off. You can see this little lip right here. That is so that once you get down to a shorter cant, you can hook this to the very bottom of the log, and that allows your saw head to get much lower without the danger of cutting into your log clamp or anything like that. So absolutely no complaints about the log clamp. That's a pretty good system, and that's one of two of them that's on this mill. So here's the winch on the mill. I was talking about it a little bit earlier, but we'll go over it a little bit closer. So this winch is a very heavy duty winch. It's a 3,500 pound winch. The mechanical advantage in it, I don't really know what the ratio is, but the mechanical, I mean, we could figure it out, but that's okay. The mechanical advantage in it is so good that, I mean, you're really just not going to have any trouble whatsoever with reasonable sized logs on it. You saw the video last week's, or whatever video that was, where we put that log that was over a ton on this winch, and it just had no trouble at all winching it up. So the only trouble that you're going to have with this, and this is going to be completely your fault, is if you're not paying attention to where this cable is, it's going to go off to the side, it's going to get jammed up in your gears, and it's going to fray the cable, and you're going to end up having to repair or replace the cable on this winch. Very, very good winch, and it's hard to get that out of those gears too, by the way, if you end up doing that. Very heavy duty winch. I've had a lot of people ask if you could possibly, instead of this cable, have that cable rope stuff. I'm not really sure what it is, but it's really good rope that's to be used with winches. And basically the advantage is if it breaks, it's not going to fly back and you know, cut your head off like a cable will. I don't know. I have never done that. I don't really envision this cable breaking under any normal circumstances with proper maintenance. I'm not afraid. The only trouble that I've had with this is some of these clips have a tendency to come out sometimes. There's C-clips, different places holding different things in place, and you can see right now even there is the issue of this brake right here. One of the C-clips has come loose and fallen out, and this brake is not being held in place. Well, actually 2 C-clips have come loose. The brake's not being held in place like it should be, so that's you may have some problems with some of the C-clips, but besides that, very, very good winch, very heavy duty, more than sufficient for what you're going to be doing on this mill. So we've been looking at different parts of the bed. Let's look at the bed as a whole. I've kind of seen this as a diss against Wood Mizer, having this modular bed system on this machine. Yeah, it's not fully welded. There's 3 separate sections on it that are bolted together. But like I showed you, those bolts, the way that it's held together is very, 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 very impressive. Very, very beefy, is what I'm trying to say. Don't expect to have any trouble with these bed rails on this machine. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that Wood Mizer calls even the LT15s that are not on a trailer portable mills, because they can be taken apart and moved to other places. You know, it's probably a good solid day's work with 2 people, but it can be done. So I guess that's what makes the mill a portable mill. Don't if you hear any naysayers about this modular system on this mill, don't listen to them. This is a good, very solid bed that has taken abuse and has shown no signs of any kind of wear or tear. Very good bed. You're not going to hurt this bed, probably no matter how hard you try, unless you put like a 5-ton log on it. You're not going to hurt it. Let's check out the jack stands. These jack stands are overall very good jack stands. They allow you to set this machine up and take it back down and move it very quickly. Like I said, I've got a adapter for my drill, and I can put it on here and just undo it and bring it down, and it's very, very fast. It makes setup. I can actually set this machine up on reasonably level ground in about 12 minutes from taking it off the trailer to having it done, set up, and ready to cut without a log, I guess. But these jacks, they're really good jacks. They're strong jacks. The only complaint that I have with them is there's 6 of them on here, and I had to replace the grease fitting on, I think, 4 out of the 6, as they just came loose and fell out during transit. And when I put new grease fittings back in, it just kind of appeared that the hole was a little bit too large for what I was trying to do. I did put Loctite on the grease fitting to try to keep it in there, and it seems to be working okay. But that's really the only complaint I have about these jack stands, is most likely your grease fittings are going to fall out. So here are the log loading ramps. These ramps are really, really built out of good solid steel. They have these notches on them right here, these little posts to help with the logs. Sometimes the logs like to yaw one way or the other if you don't have them perfectly centered, and they do help with that. But these are really, really good. It doesn't make it perfect. You've got to make sure you got everything lined up right. But these are really heavy-duty ramps, good solid ramps, and if you've been one of these ramps, you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. But these are actually movable. There's several places on this mill that you can move these ramps to, according to the size of the log that you're dealing with. So that's very convenient. You can't move the winch. You can't move the winch up and down the mill, but you can move these ramps to different locations, which is very, very helpful. It makes it a lot more convenient as far as log positioning and that kind of thing. So yeah, good ramps, very good solid ramps, and these ramps come with the accessory kit of the log loading package. It's the winch and the ramps, and I think that package is right around $500, $400, I'm not sure, somewhere along in there. But if you're going to make this a mobile mill, a Go package, you're going to certainly need those. So guys, that's pretty well all I've got for this video. Overall, I'm really happy with this mill. This is a good solid mill. It stays within adjustment like it's supposed to. It saws logs pretty fast. I think it's a pretty fast mill for its size, and of course with the size of logs and the species that I'm cutting, pine and 14, 15, 16, 18 inch logs, it's a very fast mill. Log handling is easy on it. Of course it's manual, so if you're planning on doing this for a living, I would definitely consider going to a hydraulic mill. The price on this machine with the power feed and the log loading package is going to be about $12,500. I think that's about what I paid for it, and for us it has been worth it. So this is a machine that if you want to go into business with it, you could. It's going to be pretty rough on you, but you can do it if you're willing to put some elbow grease into it. But I think mostly this machine is designed for heavier work around your house, homestead type use. Maybe if you've got a woodworking business and you need to saw logs for use in that business. But if you're interested in going out and sawing logs for other people, please consider a hydraulic mill. This manual mill is just going to work you completely to death, and the production on it is going to be much lower than what you need. But having said that, this is a really good solid mill. The only issue that I think is a legitimate complaint is that right side post being torqued just a little bit out of spec. Wood Mizer was able to fix that to my satisfaction. So, you know, if that's one thing about Wood Mizer. If you get a Wood Mizer mill, they will back their product. If they make a mistake in manufacturing, they're going to fix it for you. I've never had any trouble with Wood Mizer customer service, and I'm very satisfied with it. Also, there's of course the issue of the width of cut on this machine. You can stick a 28 inch log in it, you're not going to get a 26 inch board out of it. So be aware if you're interested in doing very large logs on a regular basis, get something larger, get the LT15 wide, get the LT28, LT35, something like that, something that'll handle what you need. But overall, like I said, you can buy this mill with confidence. You can buy this mill and it will deliver what you're expecting it to deliver. Good solid machine. I've been happy with it. I've been very, very happy with it, and I would recommend it to anybody. There's tons of videos on the channel with me using this machine. Check out the channel. I've got videos of me cutting cedar, lots of pine, some sweet gum, posts, boards, anything. Just check it out. Hope you enjoy them, and I hope this video was helpful to somebody that might be in the market for a mill of this size, and I'll see y'all next time.